The early morning sun cast a golden haze over Washington, D.C., the streets shimmering after a light drizzle, reflecting the city's orderly chaos. Emily Carter, a 45-year-old accountant with a poised demeanor and sharp analytical mind, sat at her kitchen table, her slender frame hunched slightly over a steaming cup of coffee. Her chestnut hair, streaked with early silver, framed a face etched with subtle lines of worry and resilience. Her green eyes, usually calm behind rectangular glasses, were now wide, brimming with a mix of anxiety and disbelief. The phone on the counter buzzed insistently, breaking the fragile morning peace. Emily's heart sank as she recognized the German country code. Josephine, her late aunt, had always been meticulous, an imposing woman of regal stature, snow-white hair, and a stern yet affectionate presence. Josephine had been more than family. She had been a mentor, a guide, the one who taught Emily the value of independence and prudence. Now, her voice would never answer again, only her carefully penned instructions. "Emily Carter?" The consul's voice was crisp, slightly accented but professional. "I regret to inform you, Mrs. Josephine Miller has passed. She left instructions regarding her estate. You are the primary beneficiary." The words hung in the air. Emily felt the coffee tremble in her hand, its warmth forgotten. Her mind raced. Munich, Miami, bank accounts. This was beyond anything she had imagined. She had been aware that her aunt was wealthy, but had always assumed it would benefit extended family collectively, not exclusively her. Now, legal clarity and precise execution were needed. Emily rose from the table, pacing the sunlit kitchen, her thoughts fracturing and aligning in a whirlwind of strategy. She was fiercely intelligent, methodical, yet the past 20 years of marriage had taught her caution. Ryan Carter, her husband, a man of 48 with broad shoulders, a square jaw, and piercing blue eyes, had always carried an air of charm, but she had come to see the calculating edge beneath. His ego, polished and seemingly generous, often masked subtle manipulations. For years, she had suspected he might claim her D.C. condo as shared property if the marriage dissolved. Her pulse quickened as the realization struck. This inheritance could be her shield. A moment later, Emily opened her laptop, scanning emails from her aunt's German lawyer. Each message was meticulous, confirming assets: a luxury condo in Munich's historic district, a sleek Miami Beach apartment with panoramic ocean views, and bank accounts totaling over $500,000. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the sudden surge of empowerment. For the first time in years, she could envision a life where her financial security was undeniable, and Ryan could not manipulate her future. She glanced around her home in Georgetown, the D.C. condo, its hardwood floors polished and windows offering a quiet view of the Potomac. A sentimental warmth stirred. This place had been hers first, purchased with her parents' gift before her marriage. Legally, it was separate property, yet she had always felt constrained by the unspoken power dynamics of her marriage. Now, a plan crystallized. She would protect her assets, ensure independence, and confront the truth when necessary. By noon, Emily had contacted the German consulate, a small office in a modern building on Embassy Row. The consul, Herr Klaus Becker, was a distinguished man in his 60s, with neatly trimmed gray hair and a commanding yet kind presence. He scrutinized her documents with precise attention to detail, noting her calm, assertive demeanor. Emily's posture was upright, her voice steady despite the emotional undercurrent. She signed paperwork for the transfer of funds and legal recognition of the Munich and Miami properties. Herr Becker smiled slightly, a mixture of admiration and relief. "Your aunt left a remarkable legacy, Miss Carter," Everything will be transferred within the week. Walking out of the consulate, the afternoon sun reflected against the polished city streets. Emily felt a subtle but profound shift within herself. The inheritance was not just money or property, it was freedom. She could now breathe, walk taller, and plan with a clear mind. She paused outside, looking at the cars streaming by, the bustling pedestrians, the mixture of ordinary life and extraordinary possibilities. She had never felt so ready to reclaim her autonomy. Returning home, Emily placed the documents in a secure safe in her study. Her thoughts flickered to Ryan, and for the first time, she allowed herself a small, private smile. He believed he held the power in their marriage, but he had underestimated her intellect, foresight, and resilience. The DC condo, already hers before marriage, combined with the inheritance, created an unassailable fortress of independence. Later that evening, as rain lightly tapped against the window panes, Emily sat by her favorite armchair, sipping herbal tea, and let herself imagine life beyond the constraints of fear and manipulation. She envisioned Miami's sunlight warming her mornings, the quiet dignity of Munich's architecture, and the security of her bank accounts. For the first time in decades, she felt in control of her own destiny. The shadows of Ryan's deceit were still present, but she no longer feared them. They were merely obstacles she now had the means to overcome. Emily's phone vibrated again. It was her colleague and confidant, Sarah Miller, a tall, lean woman with fiery red hair and an infectious laugh, known for her quick wit and unwavering loyalty. Sarah had been Emily's friend for over 15 years, offering counsel and support through countless life challenges. Emily smiled, thinking of sharing the first glimmers of her newfound independence. "Sarah," she typed, "everything's changed. I'm ready." The chapter closes with Emily gazing at the city lights, the weight of uncertainty lifting. She felt the pulse of life, the promise of autonomy, and the first faint thrill of empowerment. Tomorrow, she would begin the process of legally securing her future, and nothing, not even Ryan's schemes, could diminish the certainty blooming within her heart. For Emily Carter, the inheritance was not merely assets, it was a new beginning. A cold breeze swept through Georgetown that morning, carrying with it the scent of damp leaves and faint exhaust fumes from the Potomac side streets. Emily Carter, still wrapped in the quiet triumph of her recent inheritance, walked briskly to the local bank. The sky was gray, clouds heavy with an approaching rain, but Emily's thoughts were sharper than any storm. She was determined, methodical, her hazel green eyes alert behind her glasses, scanning the street as she carried her slim, black briefcase. Her chestnut hair, streaked with silver, bounced lightly with each step, her posture impeccably straight. Years of disciplined accounting had taught her to always appear calm, even when plotting her moves. Inside the bank, the polished marble floors reflected the fluorescent lights, amplifying the quiet hum of morning transactions. Emily approached the teller, a young woman with auburn hair in a neat bun, and arranged to open a series of separate accounts under her name. Every signature, every notarized form, every cautious conversation was a brick in a growing fortress she intended to build around her newfound independence. She felt the thrill of control, a sensation long denied by her marriage to Ryan Carter, her husband of 25 years, a man who had perfected charm and deceit in equal measure. Ryan Carter, 48, had the presence of a man used to power. Broad-shouldered, with sharply chiseled features, a strong jawline, and piercing blue eyes, he had always projected charisma to the outside world, yet those who knew him closely recognized the calculating coldness beneath. Today, Emily knew, he was planning a spectacle, a public humiliation of his own wife at the 25-year anniversary celebration, designed to assert dominance, erase her independence, and pressure her into surrendering her assets. Behind the mask of a successful CEO, Ryan's mind churned with schemes and manipulations, a legacy of decades spent mastering control over those he deemed weaker. Gloria Carter, Ryan's mother, entered the scene subtly, a woman of 70 with an imposing presence. Her long gray hair was always tied tightly in a bun, and her sharp, dark eyes could pierce through any argument. Gloria was controlling and exacting, accustomed to having her opinions shape family decisions, particularly regarding matters of wealth and status. She had groomed Ryan from childhood to succeed, to dominate, and now she quietly approved of his manipulative tendencies, believing that ambition justified deception. Meanwhile, Leah Morgan, a strikingly beautiful 30-year-old with chestnut hair cascading over her shoulders and a flawless, sun-kissed complexion, lounged in a high-end boutique downtown, scrolling through her phone. Her personality was a combination of charm and cunning, her intelligence often underestimated due to her appearance. Leah had entered Ryan's life 3 months ago, becoming both his confidant and accomplice. She had been carefully cultivated into the role of the perfect mistress, young enough to excite him, naive enough to be manipulated. Yet Emily knew instinctively that she was not entirely unaware of Ryan's schemes. As Emily secured her financial independence, she could feel the gears of Ryan's plan turning in the background. Subtle conversations with her lawyer and the inheritance documents revealed discrepancies and loopholes Ryan intended to exploit. His goal was audacious. During the grand anniversary gala, he would publicly accuse her of being unworthy, humiliate her socially, and legally pressure her into relinquishing the condo, effectively leaving her with nothing but memories. The thought tightened Emily's chest, not with fear, but with determination. She knew his type: the charm, the manipulation, the sense of entitlement, and she had spent years quietly cataloging his patterns. Emily's cat, Jasper, a sleek black feline with bright amber eyes, padded into the room, circling her legs. The small, comforting presence reminded her of control over the simple, real things in life. She bent down, scratching behind his ears, feeling a fleeting sense of peace amidst the storm of strategy forming in her mind. She began mapping her countermeasures, reinforcing legal claims, preparing public reactions, and ensuring the inheritance remained untouchable. Every plan was meticulous, grounded in logic and prior experience. Ryan's theatrics would not catch her unprepared. By late afternoon, Emily returned home, rain tapping gently against the windows. The DC condo felt more like a command center than a home. Her papers, financial statements, and legal documents were spread neatly on the dining table. Every line, every clause, was a weapon in the coming confrontation. She imagined the gala, the glittering ballroom, the chandeliers reflecting light over polished floors, the 100 guests unaware of the storm brewing behind the polite smiles and polite toasts. Emily's pulse quickened, a mixture of anticipation and the quiet thrill of empowerment. In her thoughts, she replayed Ryan's last conversations, subtle threats masked as concern, reminders of joint ownership, and veiled comments about her dullness and dependence. He had underestimated her, as he had done for years. Emily allowed herself a small, private smile, envisioning how she would turn his own plan against him. She would not be a victim. This was the first time in decades she felt the raw power of autonomy, untainted by his ego or Gloria's shadow. She reviewed Leah's role. The young mistress believed herself in control, a player alongside Ryan. Yet Emily saw Leah as a tool, a mirror of Ryan's arrogance. In her mind, Leah was no longer a threat but a pawn. Emily's strategy involved exposing the deceit, asserting her legal and moral authority, and using the spectacle to protect her assets. The psychological aspect of the game fascinated Emily. Manipulation, perception, public embarrassment, and the eventual reclamation of truth. She understood deeply that fear and shame were tools Ryan wielded, but could also be wielded against him. As dusk approached, the streets glistened from fresh rain, and Emily's reflection in the window caught her attention. Her chestnut hair framed a determined face, her green eyes fierce yet composed, her slim frame upright and unwavering. In that reflection, she saw a woman transformed by inheritance, knowledge, and resolve. No longer constrained by Ryan's manipulations, she felt the electric thrill of control over her own destiny. The storm outside mirrored the storm inside, yet Emily's heart remained steady, clear, and ready. The chapter closes with Emily sitting at her desk, reviewing legal clauses one more time, a quiet smile playing on her lips. Tomorrow, the gala would arrive, Ryan would reveal his plan, and Emily would already be steps ahead. Every movement, every word, every reaction had been anticipated. She poured herself a glass of tea, Jasper leaping onto the desk, and looked out the window. The city lights reflected her newfound confidence. Emily Carter was no longer a wife under the thumb of deceit. She was a strategist, a protector of her wealth, and a woman finally in command of her own life. The mask of her quiet compliance had cracked. What remained was clarity, power, and the anticipation of justice. The early morning fog hung low over Georgetown, settling on the cobblestone streets with a damp, almost ghostly hush. Emily Carter stepped out of her condo, wrapped in a long, camel-colored trench coat, the collar pulled slightly up against the chill. Her hazel-green eyes, sharp and calculating, scanned the quiet street, and the crispness in the air mirrored the focus she felt within. Every step echoed softly against the wet pavement, a rhythmic reminder of purpose. She carried a slim briefcase filled with documents that represented her future independence, her hard-won leverage against a husband who had spent years undermining her confidence. Inside her car, a sleek black Lexus ES300 that she had purchased years ago, Emily rehearsed her plans silently. Her thoughts were methodical, dissecting every clause of her recent inheritance, the DC condo that had been a gift from her parents before marriage, and the legal loopholes she had identified. She was acutely aware of Ryan Carter's calculating nature. The man, 48, with his sharp jawline, deep-set blue eyes, and carefully styled salt and pepper hair, exuded authority and arrogance. His commanding presence had dominated boardrooms and social gatherings alike, but Emily knew his confidence was brittle, built on manipulation and fear. Today, she would see Mr. Thompson, the real estate attorney who had overseen the original purchase of the DC condo. Mr. Thompson, a man in his 60s with thinning gray hair, wire-rimmed glasses, and a slight stoop from decades of meticulous desk work, was known for his precision and unwavering integrity. His calm demeanor and thoroughness had always impressed Emily, and now she needed him more than ever. She parked in front of his brick townhouse office and stepped inside, the familiar scent of polished wood and aged leather welcoming her. "Emily, it's been too long," Mr. Thompson said warmly, his voice steady and reassuring. Despite his age, he moved with purpose, his tailored navy suit perfectly aligned with the respect he commanded in the legal community. He gestured toward a leather chair as she sat, opening her briefcase. "I assume this is about your DC property?" Emily nodded, feeling a quiet relief at the sight of a trusted ally. She presented the original property deed, along with her recent inheritance documents from Germany. "I need to make sure this is beyond dispute. Ryan, my husband, has a history of attempting to control everything," she explained, The words clipped, but measured, revealing controlled anger beneath her calm exterior. Mr. Thompson reviewed the documents carefully, adjusting his glasses. Emily, the condo is clearly premarital property. The documents are airtight. No legal maneuvering on Ryan's part can claim it, provided we maintain proper records and signatures. You are fully protected. Relief washed over Emily, yet a small part of her knew that paperwork alone would not guard against the emotional games Ryan might play. She thanked him and scheduled follow-ups to ensure everything remained secure. Next, Emily met Ms. Aisha Bennett, a bright, young family law attorney with short black hair, caramel-toned skin, and an assertive demeanor that immediately inspired confidence. Aisha's reputation for strategic thinking and aggressive defense in high-stakes divorce cases preceded her. She greeted Emily with a firm handshake, her dark brown eyes scanning Emily's case notes with precision. We'll make sure he cannot manipulate or intimidate you. Every step of his scheme can be countered, legally and publicly, if necessary. Aisha assured, the corners of her lips hinting at a professional smile, but her gaze firm, as if daring any adversary to challenge her. They spent hours meticulously reviewing Emily's assets, inheritance documents, and potential vulnerabilities in her marriage. Emily learned the legal tools available: protective trusts, separate bank accounts, international financial options, and methods to document Ryan's attempts at coercion. She felt empowered, the years of quiet compliance now transformed into precise, actionable knowledge. Every detail was mapped out, every scenario considered. Her mind worked like a chessboard, planning moves and counter-moves, anticipating Ryan's behavior, and ensuring she stayed several steps ahead. After the meetings, Emily returned to her office at the accounting firm, a tall, modern space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the bustling city below. The office was humming with early morning energy, her colleagues chatting over coffee and computers clicking rhythmically. She was well respected here. Her meticulous work had earned her trust and admiration. Yet today, she had to tread carefully. She requested a private meeting with her boss, Mr. Michael Boudreau, a man in his early 50s, tall, with salt and pepper hair and a quiet, analytical presence. His gray-blue eyes exuded authority, yet kindness softened his expressions. A man who valued both results and integrity. Michael? Emily began, her voice calm but resolute. I need to inform you about a personal situation. It may require attention in the coming weeks, but I assure you, my work will remain unaffected. She explained briefly about Ryan's possible plans to initiate a contentious divorce and the legal steps she was taking to secure her assets. Boudreau listened attentively, his expression thoughtful. Emily, I trust your judgment completely. Handle your personal matters, and will adjust as necessary. Your role here is invaluable, and I don't want any disruption affecting your career. You have my full support, he said firmly, offering her a sense of stability amidst the emotional storm. Emily felt the warmth of genuine support, a stark contrast to the manipulation and deceit she faced at home. The sense of control she had gained in recent weeks began to crystallize into confidence. Her colleagues were unaware of the personal battles she waged, yet their ordinary interactions, emails, meetings, brief discussions, provided a comforting structure. She could still maintain her professional identity while building her personal fortress, a duality that strengthened her resolve. Returning home as evening fell, the city bathed in a soft amber glow from street lamps. Emily reviewed her strategy once more. She imagined the upcoming anniversary gala. The chandeliers, the polished floors, the elegant guests oblivious to the storm brewing beneath the polite smiles. She knew Ryan's plan for public humiliation, but now, equipped with legal backing and a clear strategy, she felt anticipation instead of fear. Every detail, from public exposure to asset protection, had been considered. The sense of mastery over her own life filled her with quiet satisfaction. Jasper, her black cat, padded alongside her legs as she moved around her condo, circling her in a comforting ritual. Emily paused to scratch behind his ears, allowing a moment of human-animal connection to ground her. She thought about the contrast between her past 25 years and the autonomy she now enjoyed. Where once she had been constrained by marriage, deceit, and fear, she was now a woman fully capable of controlling her destiny. The fog of manipulation and power games had begun to lift, revealing clarity and opportunity. As night deepened, Emily placed the files in a secure safe, double-checked her accounts, and sipped tea while looking out at the lights reflecting off the Potomac. She considered each person involved. Ryan, with his arrogance and entitlement. Gloria, with her controlling influence. Leah, young and ambitious, yet ultimately a pawn. And herself, newly empowered, fully aware of the legal and emotional tools at her disposal. She allowed herself a small smile. The mask of her quiet compliance had been removed. She was no longer a passive participant, but a strategist. A woman fully equipped to protect what was rightfully hers. The city hummed below, but within the walls of her condo, Emily Carter had found the stillness of focus, the strength of preparation, and the quiet thrill of impending justice. A soft spring drizzle fell over the city, blurring the lights of downtown and lending a reflective sheen to the streets. Inside the Grand Marquette Hotel, the ballroom glimmered under crystal chandeliers, a sea of formally dressed guests chatting with anticipation. Emily Carter, 45, tall and poised with shoulder-length chestnut hair and hazel green eyes that had gained a new sharpness, adjusted the silk shawl draped over her shoulders. Her posture exuded confidence, a quiet power that had been forged through months of meticulous planning and legal strategizing. She had rehearsed every word, every movement, and every scenario in her mind. Tonight was not just a celebration of 25 years of marriage, it was a reckoning. Ryan Carter, 48, stood near the podium, his angular face tense, jaw clenched, and piercing blue eyes scanning the room as if daring anyone to challenge him. His salt and pepper hair was immaculately styled, and his tailored navy suit hugged his broad shoulders, projecting authority. Yet beneath the polished exterior, his mind raced with anxiety. He had planned this moment for months, rehearsing a public announcement of divorce that he believed would humiliate Emily. But uncertainty gnawed at him. The faint quiver in his hands betrayed the cracks in the armor of his usual confidence. Behind Ryan, Leah Bennett, 30, stood with an almost imperceptible smirk, her long, dark hair cascading in soft waves over her slim frame. Her pale skin and sharp cheekbones, combined with a confident tilt of her chin, gave her an air of calculated self-assuredness. She had been Ryan's accomplice in his manipulations, and she relished the attention tonight, convinced that she would step into the spotlight as the new life of a successful man. Her amber eyes flicked toward Emily with mild curiosity, masking the tension she felt despite her outward composure. Emily's eyes scanned the room one last time, taking in familiar faces, colleagues, family, and friends who had known her for decades. Each guest represented a potential witness to the unveiling of truth. She could feel the familiar pulse of adrenaline, the kind that sharpened her focus instead of rattling her. She had prepared meticulously, the documents proving her ownership of the DC condo, the notarized proof of her inheritance from her beloved Aunt Josephine in Germany, and evidence of Ryan's financial schemes. Every piece of paper was a shield, a weapon, and a declaration of autonomy. The orchestra struck the first notes of a waltz, and Ryan stepped up to the podium, smiling, though his eyes darted nervously. Dear friends, family, and colleagues, he began, voice smooth, yet carrying a calculated charm. Tonight, we celebrate 25 years of partnership, and it is time to share some important news. Emily's heart beat steadily, each pulse a quiet drum of anticipation. She remained seated at the center table, a composed figure in an emerald green dress that complemented her hazel eyes and framed her determined expression. Leah shifted slightly, leaning in toward Ryan, her manicured hand resting lightly on his arm. "Make it perfect," she whispered, her voice low and sharp. Ryan nodded, though the words failed to mask the unease creeping along the edges of his confident facade. He cleared his throat and began the speech he had rehearsed countless times, words laced with subtle jabs meant to belittle Emily, to position Leah as the bright future beside a failed marriage. The guests murmured, sensing tension, the undercurrent of drama rippling beneath the polished celebration. Emily waited. She let him continue, letting the room fill with the illusion of control. Then, as Ryan's tone turned sharper, hinting at the divorce, she stood, moving with quiet authority toward the microphone placed at the edge of the stage. Her hazel eyes met Ryan's, unwavering and luminous. "Excuse me," she said softly, but the room immediately fell silent, sensing that the flow of the event had been interrupted. The orchestra halted mid-note, the chandeliers reflecting an almost ethereal glow onto Emily's determined face. Ryan's confident smile faltered. "Emily, now is not the time," he began, voice edged with panic. Emily raised her hand, gesturing for him to pause. "No, Ryan, I believe this is exactly the time," she said, her tone calm yet piercing, each word deliberate. She glanced at Leah, whose smirk began to waver, and then toward the guests, many of whom leaned forward, sensing the drama about to unfold. Emily lifted the folder she had carried meticulously, sliding the documents onto the podium. "For 25 years, I believed in loyalty, honesty, and partnership. Tonight, I would like to share the truth." Gasps spread through the room. She began with the legal papers proving her ownership of the DC condo, explaining its premarital status and outlining its protection from division. "This property has always been mine, legally and irrefutably. Ryan, your attempts to manipulate and control it will fail." The precision in her voice left no room for interruption. Next, she presented notarized documentation of her inheritance from Josephine, the account balances, and the condo in Miami. "Furthermore," she continued, "the inheritance left to me by my aunt is fully mine. It is separate, untouchable, and I will ensure it remains so." Whispers rippled across the room. Ryan's face drained of color, the carefully maintained aura of confidence collapsing like a house of cards. Leah's posture stiffened. The smirk that had been her shield vanished. Guests turned toward them, murmuring with growing shock and fascination. Emily's voice did not waver. She detailed the months of deceit, the financial manipulations, and Ryan's plan to coerce her into relinquishing her rightful assets. Every accusation was measured, backed by irrefutable proof. "Ladies and gentlemen," Emily concluded, "tonight you witness not just an anniversary, but a revelation. Honesty and integrity will always prevail. The truth cannot be silenced, no matter how carefully some may attempt to disguise it." She placed the microphone down, letting the weight of her words settle. The room was electric with tension, eyes shifting between Emily, Ryan, and Leah. For the first time, the facade of power Ryan had cultivated for decades crumbled completely. Leah tried to interject, her voice sharp and defensive, but the guests' murmurs drowned her out. "Shame," one whispered. I cannot believe he thought he could deceive her so publicly. A few guests approached Emily, offering nods of admiration, support shining in their eyes. Ryan, now visibly trembling, realized that his carefully orchestrated spectacle had backfired entirely. His authority, his social standing, and his control over the narrative had all evaporated. Emily stepped back, letting silence speak volumes. She looked around the room, observing the shock, the moral judgment, and the awe reflected in the eyes of everyone present. The feeling of empowerment coursed through her veins, stronger than adrenaline, stronger than the anxiety she had felt in the months prior. She was no longer a pawn in Ryan's manipulations. She was the strategist, the woman who had reclaimed her life, her assets, and her dignity. As the first few guests began to leave, murmuring about the dramatic turn of events, Emily felt a deep sense of satisfaction. The anniversary that Ryan had intended as a stage for humiliation had instead become a testament to her intelligence, preparation, and unwavering resolve. She glanced once at Ryan and Leah, their faces pale and defeated, then turned gracefully toward the exit. Jasper, her black cat, would be waiting at home, a silent companion to witness her triumph. Tonight, Emily Carter had not only defended her rights, she had claimed victory in the most public and decisive way possible. A cold, crisp evening breeze swept across the city streets outside the Grand Marquette Hotel, carrying the scent of wet pavement and spring blossoms. Inside, the echoes of last night's chaos lingered in the grand ballroom, now sparsely populated with lingering guests whispering about the unprecedented events. Emily Carter, 45, stood near the doorway, her emerald green dress catching the dim light of the chandeliers, hair still perfectly styled, eyes calm but alert. She felt a rare serenity wash over her, a mixture of relief, vindication, and excitement at the newfound freedom she had painstakingly carved from months of manipulation and deceit. For the first time in decades, the weight of fear, distrust, and doubt had lifted from her shoulders. Ryan Carter, 48, remained in the center of the room, shoulders slumped, his usually sharp blue eyes clouded with panic. The angular lines of his face, usually accentuated by a confident smile, now seemed drawn and hollow. His expensive navy suit, once a symbol of control and power, hung slightly off his frame, disheveled from the tension and anxiety of public humiliation. The man who had orchestrated a plan to dominate and belittle his wife now found himself paralyzed by the consequences of his own arrogance. His hands, which had gripped the podium so firmly moments ago, now shook slightly as he glanced helplessly at the retreating guests, murmurs of judgment following them like a tide of whispers. Gloria Carter, 70, Ryan's mother, entered the room from a side corridor. She was a stately woman with graying hair swept into a precise chignon and sharp features that reflected a lifetime of control and intimidation. Her tall, slender frame was clad in a tailored cream suit, the pearls around her neck accentuating her air of authority. Yet tonight, her composure faltered. Her eyes, usually cold and calculating, flicked anxiously between her son and the evidence Emily had revealed. The numbers, the debts, the misappropriated funds, all exposed her son's recklessness and, by extension, her own complicity in enabling his indulgences. Gloria's lips pressed into a thin line. The pride that had always sustained her now threatened to crack under the weight of shame. Leah Bennett, 30, once confident and cunning, stood at the edge of the ballroom, her posture rigid, her amber eyes wide with dawning realization. Her dark hair fell in loose waves, framing her pale, sharp features. But tonight, there was no hint of smug satisfaction. The luxurious silk gown she had chosen seemed to mock her, highlighting a moment of betrayal she hadn't anticipated. Ryan had deceived her as much as he had Emily. Her lips parted, forming words she never spoke, a bitter mix of disbelief and anger. The calculated ambition she had worn like armor for months dissolved, leaving her exposed and uncertain. Without a word, she turned and walked out, her heels echoing sharply against the polished floor, each step a punctuation, mark to her disillusionment. Emily, standing composed near the exit, allowed herself a small smile as she watched the ripple effect of her revelation. This wasn't vengeance in the traditional sense, but a reclamation of her life. Every shocked glance, every whispered comment, and every shuffling retreating guest reaffirmed the precision of her strategy. She had anticipated Ryan's hubris, his need to dominate, and had used it against him with care, leveraging legal proof and moral authority. She felt the exhilaration of agency, the quiet, inner satisfaction that came from knowing she had protected her future, her assets, and her dignity without compromising her integrity. As the crowd thinned, murmurs turned into conversations among the remaining few. Colleagues debating the audacity of Ryan's plan, neighbors reflecting on the public spectacle, and friends marveling at Emily's composed defiance. She noticed Mr. Thompson, her real estate attorney, a middle-aged man with graying temples, glasses perched on the bridge of his nose, and a slight stoop from years hunched over documents. He approached quietly, giving her a nod of approval, the kind that conveyed respect without the need for words. Emily's lips curved into a grateful smile, the silent acknowledgement of alliances that had remained steadfast throughout this ordeal. Ryan's panic escalated as he reviewed the scattered documents on the podium, the numbers of debts, $43,000 in mismanaged loans, blinding him with their implication. He could not hide his despair from Gloria, who crossed her arms, her pearl bracelet catching the remaining chandelier light as she shook her head. "You've squandered everything," she said, voice low but sharp, each word a scalpel cutting through his ego. "All of it. And for what? This humiliation? This shame?" The truth of her disappointment, combined with the tangible losses, left Ryan unable to formulate a defense. Each word Emily had spoken had stripped him bare in the eyes of everyone who mattered. A few of the lingering guests, sensing the finality of Ryan's public collapse, began quietly filming on their phones, their faces set with an eagerness to document this rare spectacle of comeuppance. Rumors would spread. Social media would immortalize this downfall. The perfect life Ryan had curated, a career, wealth, admiration, and a mistress, now seemed like a mirage, evaporating under the weight of truth. Emily, sensing the shift, allowed herself to acknowledge her internal transformation. The woman who had entered this room months ago, naive and trusting, had emerged empowered, sharp, and self-assured. The months of strategizing, the quiet late nights drafting legal documents, and the careful cultivation of her allies had culminated in this moment of ultimate clarity. She did not gloat, nor did she feel anger, only a profound recognition that justice, careful and methodical, had a power that theatrics could not match. Gloria, now quietly retreating toward the exit, cast a final glance at Ryan. There was disappointment, yes, but also an acknowledgement that the consequences were his alone. Emily had not actively destroyed him. She had merely allowed the truth to shine. Leah, already halfway down the grand staircase, paused briefly to glance back, her eyes reflecting bitter comprehension. The man she had relied upon was incapable of the loyalty and cunning she had imagined. Ryan finally slumped into a chair near the center of the room, the weight of exposure pressing down on him. His eyes, once sharp and commanding, darted helplessly to the floor, and then toward Emily, who now walked gracefully toward the exit. He realized that his reputation was shattered, his financial recklessness exposed, and his personal duplicity laid bare. In that moment, he understood the magnitude of what he had lost. Not just material wealth, but control, respect, and the facade he had relied upon for decades. The night air greeted Emily as she stepped out of the hotel, the drizzle having turned into a light mist that sparkled in the streetlights. She took a deep breath, inhaling freedom, self-reliance, and a sense of unassailable dignity. Jasper, her black cat with striking green eyes and sleek fur, would await her at home, a comforting companion to greet her with the quiet affirmation of loyalty and presence. She felt no malice toward those who had wronged her, only the satisfaction of having reclaimed her life on her own terms. As she hailed a taxi, Emily allowed herself one final glance at the hotel, the scene of both confrontation and liberation. Behind her, the remnants of Ryan's carefully constructed world, the mistress, the debt, the humiliation, lay exposed and fragmented. She knew this was more than just a victory over deceit. It was a reclamation of autonomy, proof that preparation, courage, and adherence to truth could overcome years of manipulation. The city lights of downtown shimmered in the distance, and Emily felt an unprecedented sense of peace, knowing that the future she had fought for was finally hers, untainted and bright. A gray morning dawned over Washington, D.C., the drizzle painting streets in silver streaks, and the chill hinted at a spring reluctant to arrive. Emily Carter, 45, adjusted her navy blazer in the rearview mirror of her car as she parked outside the federal courthouse. Her green eyes, sharp and alert, betrayed a mixture of nerves and steely determination. Her dark brown hair, neatly tied into a low bun, framed a face hardened by years of careful planning and recent revelations. Emily's posture was impeccable, her high heels clicking against the marble steps as she entered, carrying the confidence of someone prepared for battle, but mindful of the weight of history that had led her here. The courthouse lobby buzzed with quiet murmurs, reporters shuffling and the distant echo of gavel strikes. Inside courtroom 3B, the air was dense with anticipation. Ryan Carter, 48, leaned against a polished wooden bench, fingers drumming nervously. His angular face, once proud and commanding, now looked weary and defeated. Dark circles under his blue eyes reflected sleepless nights spent trying to calculate damage control. His expensive suit, though tailored, hung loosely around his shoulders, betraying the stress and self-reproach he had been unable to shake since the public humiliation at the anniversary party. The corporate CEO's poise had vanished. Tonight, Ryan was simply a man exposed, fragile, and scrambling. Gloria Carter, 70, Ryan's mother, was seated behind him. Her gray hair, always immaculately arranged, was tied in a precise bun, and her sharp features remained stiff as a mask of control. Her cream-colored suit, once a symbol of authority and sophistication, seemed almost too formal in the tense atmosphere. The pearls around her neck trembled slightly as she shifted her hands, betraying unease. Decades of commanding family affairs had not prepared her for the embarrassment of being publicly linked to her son's misdeeds. Emily's legal team arrived, led by Ms. Aisha Bennett, a 38-year-old family law specialist with sleek black hair, warm brown eyes, and an aura of calm authority. Aisha's presence gave Emily reassurance. The woman exuded quiet confidence, meticulously prepared with every document, copy, and legal precedent they would need. Beside her, Mr. Thompson, the middle-aged real estate attorney with salt and pepper hair and round glasses perched on the bridge of his nose, carried the D.C. condo's original ownership documents, a tangible key to Emily's victory. The judge entered, an elderly woman with silver-framed glasses and a quiet, commanding presence. Her eyes scanned the courtroom like a hawk, balancing authority with fairness, each step deliberate and measured. The sound of her gavel struck with gravity, silencing the room instantly. "Court is now in session," she declared. Emily's heart pounded in her chest, but she allowed a deep, steadying breath to center herself. Ryan's lawyer, a young, nervous attorney named Derek Lawson, 32, tried to exude confidence, but his jittery hands and rapid speech betrayed uncertainty. He was tall, lean, with dark hair perpetually falling into his eyes, and his inexperience was apparent in every hesitant objection he raised. He attempted to argue the condo was marital property, but Ms. Aisha Bennett countered, presenting evidence of Emily's prior ownership, purchase documentation, and clear title deeds from before the marriage. The courtroom murmured as the documents were laid out, irrefutable proof that Emily's rights were intact. Ryan's panic escalated. "Your Honor, these are personal investments," he shouted, voice cracking under pressure. "The condo, the inheritance, these were meant for both of us." The judge's gaze remained steady, her calm demeanor slicing through the chaos. "Property acquired before marriage, confirmed through proper documentation and not commingled, is considered separate," she replied firmly. "The court recognizes Mrs. Carter's claim." Gloria shifted uncomfortably in her seat, lips pressed thin, while Ryan sank lower, the weight of public exposure and financial recklessness evident. Emily, feeling the inner thrill of vindication, didn't smile too broadly. She had prepared for this not with triumph in mind, but with diligence and precision. Every document, every consultation, every late night of planning had led to this moment. The power of preparation, she realized, far outweighed the impulsive confidence Ryan had relied on for years. The judge continued with division of property. "The cabin property is recognized as marital property and will be divided equally. The Lexus ES 300, purchased from common funds, will also be split. Debts incurred personally by Mr. Carter, including a $20,000 Chase loan, a $15,000 Wells Fargo loan, and an $8,000 Quick loan, shall be the sole responsibility of Mr. Carter, as they were not used for marital welfare." Ryan's face turned pale, his jaw tight, every word sinking like stones. His mother's eyes met his, a silent mixture of disappointment and incredulity. Emily remained composed, her heartbeat steady despite the adrenaline of the courtroom drama. This legal confirmation was more than just a financial safeguard. It was symbolic, a full acknowledgement of her rights, her foresight, and her resilience. The months of strategizing, the consultation with Aisha, the meticulous accounting of her Aunt Josephine's inheritance, and her preparation to defend what was hers had borne fruit. For the first time, she truly understood the strength inherent in preparation and knowledge of the law. Derek Lawson attempted one final objection, flustered and red-faced, but the judge, unyielding, dismissed it without hesitation. "Objection denied. The court finds in favor of Mrs. Emily Carter on all claims relating to separate property and inherited assets." A quiet but palpable sigh of relief filled Emily's chest. The tension she had carried for weeks began to dissolve, replaced by calm satisfaction. As the proceedings concluded, the court clerk read aloud the final decree. "The marriage between Emily Carter and Ryan Carter is dissolved. Mrs. Carter retains full ownership of the D.C. condo and all inheritance funds. Mr. Carter is responsible for personal debts and receives half the value of the cabin and vehicle. No alimony is awarded." The words resonated like a bell, tolling a definitive end. Ryan sat frozen, a man undone by his own miscalculations. The public humiliation of the anniversary party had been a prelude. Now, legal consequences sealed the reality. Emily observed him briefly, noting how his posture sagged. The arrogance that had once radiated from him now replaced with vulnerability and defeat. He was no longer a predator in her life, but simply a cautionary tale of hubris and greed. As Emily exited the courthouse, the drizzle had faded, leaving the streets glistening in the soft morning light. She inhaled deeply, tasting freedom, and realized the significance of the moment. She had fought with preparation, wisdom, and calm fortitude, not anger or malice, and had emerged victorious. Jasper, her loyal black cat with piercing green eyes, would greet her at home, a small but comforting symbol of the life she had chosen and defended. Every step she took away from the courthouse felt lighter, each one a reminder that autonomy, diligence, and integrity could prevail over manipulation and deceit. The sun rose lazily over Miami Beach, casting warm golden rays across the pastel-colored buildings and the gentle ripples of the Atlantic. Emily Carter, 45, stepped onto the balcony of her new condo, her slender frame silhouetted against the shimmering sea. Her skin, slightly sun-kissed, contrasted beautifully with her chestnut brown hair cascading freely over her shoulders. Green eyes, now calm and reflective, scanned the horizon. A soft breeze carried the scent of salt and blooming hibiscus, invigorating her senses and signaling a fresh start. She inhaled deeply, feeling the weight of past betrayals lift from her chest, replaced by the light thrill of independence. Inside the condo, the space was cozy but sophisticated, a reflection of Emily's taste, neutral tones accented with warm woods, large windows letting in natural light, and a few carefully selected artworks. Jasper, her black cat with sharp green eyes and a sly, independent personality, padded softly across the polished floor, brushing against her legs as if acknowledging her triumph. He had been a silent companion through all the turbulence, a comforting constant in her life. Emily's mind wandered briefly to the events of the past months. The anniversary confrontation, the court battle, the humiliation of Ryan and Leah. She smiled faintly, not with malice, but with the quiet satisfaction of one who had fought fairly and won. Her publishing office was a small room within the condo, neatly arranged with stacks of European literature awaiting translation. The first translator, Ana Delgado, a young woman of 28 with sleek black hair, warm olive skin, and a vibrant, enthusiastic personality, had already arrived, arranging manuscripts on the table. Anna's energy was infectious, and Emily felt a renewed sense of purpose as they discussed upcoming projects. This venture was more than a business. It was Emily's declaration of autonomy and creativity, a tangible manifestation of her years of deferred dreams. Meanwhile, across the city, Ryan Carter navigated the congested streets in his aging Toyota Camry, his jaw tight, knuckles white on the steering wheel. At 48, his once chiseled face bore the lines of stress and regret. The arrogance that had defined him seemed to have eroded under public exposure. The loss of his CEO position, the viral footage of the anniversary party, and the crushing court defeat had forced him into a modest life. He now ferried passengers for a living, each fare a reminder of decisions made in haste and greed. His blue eyes, once sharp and calculating, now scanned the rearview mirror anxiously, avoiding eye contact with other drivers and pedestrians, consumed by a gnawing sense of inadequacy. Gloria Carter, 70, had downsized drastically. The grand mansion she had managed with precision and control was sold, leaving her in a modest one-bedroom apartment on the city's outskirts. Her meticulous nature remained intact, gray hair tied neatly in a bun, though the lines of worry etched deeply across her face. She spent her days managing household budgets with a meticulousness previously reserved for her son's affairs, a bitter reminder of the unpredictability of life when overconfidence and control fail. Leah Mitchell, 30, Ryan's former mistress, had moved on to a life of luxury, though less intellectually stimulating than her previous high society aspirations. Her caramel-colored hair, always immaculately styled, now framed the face of a woman learning that charm alone could open doors, but not secure respect or genuine loyalty. She had married a 50-year-old restaurant entrepreneur, wealthy but naive, and often found herself surrounded by opulence that felt hollow. Her social media posts, filled with sparkling images but lacking the substance she had once imagined her life would hold. Back in Miami, Emily sat at her desk, opening a fresh manuscript and running her fingers along the embossed cover. She thought of the lessons learned over the past year. The importance of preparation, understanding law and rights, and the resilience that comes from defending oneself. She no longer felt anger at Ryan. Resentment had given way to clarity. She was free, not just financially, but emotionally and mentally. Every email from Anna, every new manuscript, every carefully arranged page reinforced a sense of self-worth she had never fully appreciated during her 25-year marriage. Her phone buzzed gently with messages from friends who had watched her journey unfold online. Words of admiration, congratulations, and support filled the screen. Emily smiled at the thought of how far she had come, from the woman who had once doubted her own strength to the woman who now made decisive moves for her happiness. She poured herself a cup of coffee and stepped back onto the balcony, letting the ocean breeze wash over her. The city below shimmered with life, a dynamic contrast to the calm within her. Freedom, she realized, was both exhilarating and grounding. Later that evening, Emily reflected on her relationship with Jasper, her feline companion who leapt gracefully onto the desk, curling up beside the manuscripts. His purring was a comforting rhythm, a reminder that loyalty and companionship could come in forms unassuming but unwavering. She laughed softly at his antics, appreciating the simplicity and purity of these moments. Life, stripped of pretension and deceit, held its own rewards. In a quiet moment, she recalled her past confrontations, the public humiliation of Ryan, the viral exposure, the court proceedings. But instead of bitterness, she felt a sense of accomplishment. Every challenge had been met with integrity and careful strategy. She had not sought revenge, only justice and self-preservation, and in doing so had reclaimed her life. Her publishing house had grown modestly but steadily, with 5 talented translators now employed under her direction. European literature flowed through her hands, each translation a bridge to the culture she had long admired but never had time to explore. Emily realized that fulfillment did not come from wealth or social status, but from pursuing one's passions and living authentically. As night fell, the condo lit up against the twilight sky, the ocean reflecting shades of indigo and gold. Emily sipped her coffee, gazing at the horizon, feeling contentment she had never known before. The past had shaped her, yes, but it did not define her. Freedom, independence, and the pursuit of one's dreams were her inheritance now. Ryan's struggles, Gloria's downsizing, Leah's hollow luxury, all were peripheral narratives in the story of her triumph. Emily Carter, once constrained by manipulation and deceit, had emerged resilient, unshakable, and fulfilled. The future was hers, and for the first time in decades, it felt limitless.